In 1666, London experienced one of the most devastating disasters in its history, the Great Fire, which forever transformed the city's appearance and accelerated its social, economic, and architectural development. But what if this fire had never occurred? How might the history of London, England, and possibly all of Europe have unfolded if this catastrophic event had been prevented? To understand the consequences of such a hypothetical scenario, it is necessary to go back to the mid-17th century, when London was a city of wooden houses, narrow streets, and dense development, where hundreds of craftsmen, traders, and artisans lived in extremely limited spaces. This city, bustling with life and market noise, was simultaneously vulnerable to natural disasters and epidemics. The narrow streets and wooden buildings with thatched roofs created ideal conditions for the spread of fire, and any spark could lead to catastrophe. The Great Fire, which began in a bakery on Pudding Lane on September 2nd, quickly turned into an uncontrollable blaze that destroyed nearly 80% of the city, burned thousands of houses, hundreds of workshops and shops, and left tens of thousands of residents homeless. But if it had not happened, London would have retained its medieval appearance, narrow streets and wooden houses, which would have had enormous cultural and architectural significance. Many Tudor-era buildings, most of which today are only seen in engravings and paintings, would have remained real parts of the urban fabric. These houses, workshops, and guilds would have continued to exist, preserving architectural diversity and the historical character unique to London in the 17th century. The city's vulnerability would have persisted. The dense wooden structures would leave it exposed to epidemics and minor fires, which could have regularly erupted and gradually disrupted the social structure. Economically, the absence of the fire would have meant that old trade guilds and workshops continued to operate without interruption. They would have preserved craft and commercial traditions, but at the same time, the city would have faced development limitations. Narrow streets, wooden houses, and dense population restricted infrastructure growth, the construction of large warehouses, port facilities, and trade centers necessary for international commerce. London's port would have been less efficient, and international financial connections might have developed more slowly, possibly giving an advantage to other European cities such as Amsterdam or Antwerp. The city's social structure would have also evolved differently. The Great Fire destroyed poor districts, forcing residents to relocate to new areas with wider streets and better sanitary conditions. Without the fire, many poor inhabitants would have remained in cramped, unsanitary houses, increasing the risk of disease and lowering the quality of life. This also affected social mobility. Without the destruction of old neighborhoods, class structures might have persisted longer, and opportunities for social and economic renewal would have been limited. Political consequences would have been different as well. The Great Fire served as a catalyst for reforms in city governance, the construction of new municipal buildings, and the standardization of architecture. Without the disaster, reforms would have proceeded more slowly, and London would have remained less organized, with more fragmented administration, which could have influenced political stability in England in the following decades. Architectural development would have been delayed as well. After the fire, stone and brick buildings began to replace wooden ones, streets were widened, squares and public spaces created, forming the foundation of the modern metropolis. Without the fire, the city would have remained wooden, narrow, with tight alleyways, increasing the risk of new catastrophes. Gradually, London would have remained a medieval city with limited opportunities for urban transformations. Cultural development would have followed a different path as well. The Great Fire opened opportunities for artists, architects, and engineers, stimulating the emergence of new styles and architectural experiments. Without the fire, the city would have remained more traditional, with a slower dynamics of change, and many architectural and cultural masterpieces of the 17th and 18th centuries might never have appeared. the economy would have remained stable in a narrow format. But the development of international trade and London's status as a financial center could have been delayed by decades. Without the city's reconstruction accelerated by disaster, London would have remained narrow streets, old workshops and guilds, but lacked the opportunity to become a modern financial and commercial hub. Medical and sanitary conditions would have evolved more slowly as well. The fire forced the clearing of districts, improvements in street layout, and construction of safer houses. Without the fire, sanitation levels would have remained low, increasing the risk of epidemics like plague and smallpox, with serious consequences for demographics and social structure. The psychological effect was also significant. The Great Fire became a symbol of renewal and new opportunities, showing residents that even destructive events can lead to progress. Without the fire, the city would have remained familiar, medieval, and less prepared for large-scale changes and innovations that came with reconstruction. In the long term, London without the fire would have remained a city where social and economic dynamics progressed slowly. Architecture remained traditional and vulnerable, and cultural development proceeded at a slower pace. Historic buildings and workshops would have survived, but modern financial, architectural, and infrastructural transformations could have been delayed for decades. Preserving Old London would have cultural significance. Historic guilds, workshops, and buildings would represent unique monuments of medieval art and urban life, which we can only reconstruct in museums and paintings. However, the absence of the disaster would have slowed urban reforms, sanitary improvements, and social mobility, leaving the city more vulnerable to future crises. The Great Fire, despite its destruction, became a catalyst for changes that shaped the modern metropolis. Without it, London would have remained medieval in spirit and structure, with slower economic, infrastructural, cultural, and social development. This hypothetical scenario demonstrates that sometimes catastrophic events create opportunities for long-term progress. London without the Great Fire would have been a city where the past remained almost intact, but the future developed more slowly, where old streets and wooden houses continued to exist, but opportunities for transformation were limited, and the lessons of history became more distant. The Great Fire marked a turning point, without which London would have remained medieval in spirit, rich in history, but lacking the dynamism and opportunities for growth.
Ultimately, the hypothetical scenario in which the Great Fire of London never occurred reveals an interesting paradox of history. Destruction, which at first seems purely tragic, in fact became a catalyst for progress. Without the fire, London would have remained a city where medieval traditions and narrow streets persisted for decades, perhaps even centuries. The architectural heritage would have been rich and authentic. Workshops and guilds would have continued to exist, and historic buildings would have stood as unique monuments of a past era. However, the cost of such preservation would have been high. Social, economic, and infrastructural transformations would have proceeded slowly. Epidemics and sanitation issues would have remained serious threats, and the development of London as a trade and financial center would have been delayed by decades. Psychologically, the city would have been less prepared for large-scale innovations and modernization, and opportunities for urban progress would have been limited. Thus, despite its destruction, the Great Fire of London became a turning point that allowed the city to reach a new level. Without it, London would have remained a city of the past, a living museum of medieval life, beautiful and authentic, but limited in its potential for growth. History shows us that catastrophes sometimes open doors for progress, while their absence leaves the past intact but restrains the future. This scenario reminds us how unpredictable events shape the course of civilizations, and that at times, destruction can be the beginning of creation.